certainly an element of making my grandfather proud and honouring him by taking part in the award that has been so much of his life's work. And I definitely hope that I have made him proud.
For years, Lady Louise has remained one of the most modest members of the royalty, stealthily avoiding the limelight as expectations swirled around her the future. Then, out of the blue, a personal choice emerged. So according to reports, King Charles was totally unprepared for it. Timelines changed, Cortis muttered, and the palace suddenly, presumptions were revised. This was a quiet uprising with significant ramifications. Why, therefore, did she pick this particular moment? What does her decision indicate about shifting priorities within palace walls? And the actual crown? The mysterious murmur that rocked the palace. In a society where the loudest change does not happen with shouting or resistance, but with silence, a world where power shifts through cool refusal rather than orders. Behind the towering walls of the palace and gilded doors where expectations are like stone and tradition breathes fiercely, one young woman chose a distinct form of bravery. This is the tale of Lady Louise Windsor, a reserved character in a boisterous institution who altered her future without protest, drama, or opposition. Lady Louise was born close enough to the throne to feel its weight, yet just far enough to be watched without being entirely comprehended. She was always on the brink of the royal limelight. Curiosity followed her around, but cameras did not. Each appearance, every decision, every absence, was meticulously recorded and discussed endlessly. Louise discovered early on that duty frequently triumphs over desire in her family. That silence could serve as a barrier as well as a unique language. In contrast to the bold Louise never made her ambitions known. Despite being a headline-grabbing royal in history, she didn't dispute custom or openly question the system she was raised in. Rather, she paid attention, noted, and thought about it. Others played their parts with ease, but Louise appeared to linger as if posing a question that few people dared to ask. What happens if this does life not belong to me? Naturally, there were whispers there. They always are. Felix was mentioned in passing among them. Not much was aware of him. There were no official declarations, no photos that appeared in publications, and no verified information. Louise's closest friends and family took great care to conceal his identity, as if it was something delicate and valuable. On a significant day that would go down in history as a turning moment, Felix was reportedly present, albeit out of sight rather than in the foreground. He didn't stand in front of her or speak on her behalf. His part, if the murmurs were deeper, more straightforward, more true. Belief, presence, and support without circumstances. Louise's story revolves around a personal problem that many people can relate to, but enhanced by protocol and privilege. The comforts of royal life, music influence and widespread recognition, but it also requires something essential in exchange. Privacy diminishes. Freedom becomes more limited. Music, life becomes a performance assessed by timetables, standards, and public acceptance. For Louise, this music, being overweight, wasn't glamorous. It was draining. Even when the crown is shining, it casts long shadows as well. Within those darkness, Louise carried dreams that did not properly conform to royal custom. She envisioned developing a profession of her own, molded by her interests as opposed to her title. She yearned for days when she was by herself, times when she could just exist without serving as a symbol of responsibility, history, or heritage. These dreams flickered quietly, like the chilly breezes of expectancy endangered the little flame, yet they remained. Not only is Louise's decision noteworthy, but so is the way she made it. There was no dramatic parting, no public separation, and no outspoken rejection of royal life. Rather, she took a hard but kind stride in her own direction. She demonstrated that strength doesn't always shout by accomplishing this. Occasionally, it waits, murmurs, and occasionally leaves without requesting permission. Her narrative takes place in the interim. Headlines. In the quiet moments when nothing appears to be happening, but everything alterations. It is a tale of mingled loss and introspection rather than defiance. With relief, and of prioritizing inner tranquility over inherited authority. Louise changed the definition of courage in the world by elevating herself above the symbol she was supposed to represent. Music has an obsession with sound. The velvet curtain is gradually drawn aside, and we recognize that this is not only a royal story, it's a human one. It reminds us that quiet decisions can bring about long-lasting change, even in the most inflexible systems. Although Lady Louise Windsor did not topple a dynasty, she demonstrated that sometimes the most courageous revolution starts with listening to your own heart and having the courage to follow it into freedom in silence. What might have led to Lady Louise's choice that caught the king off guard? Is she genuinely interested in getting married? Let's investigate. The man with Lady Louise, Felix, a 20-year-old student at the University of St. Andrews, has subtly grown to be a familiar presence next to Lady Louise, arousing the interest of royal observers. Over the past 2 years, the two have been gradually getting to know one another, according to those close to the scene. At least to bystanders, what started out as a low-key friendship between university peers now seems to have grown, become something cozier and more significant. Felix has been spotted standing by Lady Louise at significant occasions, especially in 2024 at the Horse and Carriage Festival. His presence there was not overlooked. Standing calmly among friends, family, and onlookers, he appeared fully at ease, offering support without bringing attention to himself. This year he again flew to Sandringham to be present for her tournament, a visit that turned out to be happy. After giving a powerful performance, Lady Louise went back home. Felix silently shared a moment of pride after receiving a silver medal. His attendance at both occasions has strengthened the impression that he is more than merely a friendly acquaintance. Felix's past is just as fascinating as worldwide. In 2004, he was born in London to Jonathan Clamp, a lawyer, and Kendall, the previous Conservative parliamentary candidate's spouse. Despite starting his early life in the UK, his upbringing quickly became more international. Later, his family relocated to Felix spent much of his early years in Australia. Music, this fusion of British heritage with a young man who seems at ease moving, has been influenced by his experiences in Australia. Between several worlds with ease. While he was in Australia, Felix attended Melbourne Grammar School between 2017 and 2022. The institution is well known for its high academic standards and emphasis on character, had a significant impact on his growth. Friends and instructors have described him as serious, grounded, and quietly self-assured, traits that seem to fit in nicely with the calm and reserved disposition frequently associated with Lady Louise. Felix decided to go back to the UK after finishing his studies there, travelling north to Scotland to attend the University of St. Andrews to finish his studies. Naturally, St. Andrews is not unfamiliar with royal ties. Its lengthy history, traditional ambience, and the tight-knit student body has created an environment where friendships can flourish away from the continual music glare of public awareness. Felix and Lady Louise have been able to spend comparatively more time together in the environment, unhindered, taking walks, lectures, and the regular rhythms of college life throughout the town, as well as private discussions that take place away from cameras. Those who witnessed the growing intimacy between the two has been quickly noticed by family. Little things, similar looks, speculation has been stoked by familiar ease and encouraging gestures. However, in keeping with the family's desire for seclusion, no formal announcement has been made to confirm the nature of their connection. Everything is still unsaid, at least in public. Still, for many, the signs feel substantial enough to elicit calm curiosity rather than wild rumor. What Felix's natural fit in these settings has particularly captivated royal observers. He doesn't seem overburdened by custom or expectation, and he doesn't pursue attention. Rather, he appears satisfied to provide solid support while standing slightly to the side. Some have questioned this peaceful assurance, whether he could one day become part of the greater royal circle. Nothing as of yet is undeniable. Relationships frequently develop slowly and out of sight, particularly when public individuals are involved. However, the simplicity of the Felix and Lady Louise narrative is what keeps people interested. It is characterized by constant presence, shared, rather than big pronouncements, theatrical displays, or music. Mutual support, music, and experiences. Whether this trip results in a position in the extended royal family in the future, music, is yet to be heard. It's evident that gradually, Felix has become a figure people are watching with great intrigue. Was Lady Louise a well-liked member of the royal family? How did she grow up? Let's examine Lady Louise's early years in more depth. Enduring bereavement and the shadows of a guarded childhood. From the moment she stepped foot in a land full of castles, crowns, and romantic tales, Lady Louise Windsor stealthily deviated from the intended route. While many thought of royal life as a procession of sparkling dresses, and waving, Louise's reality developed away from the spotlight in front of large people. She wasn't brought up to pose for headlines or chase applause. Rather, Her formative years were influenced by peaceful areas and well-considered selections created by parents who desired something uncommon for a child of royalty, an existence that seemed authentic. Music, Prince Edward and Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, purposefully chose to protect their kids from the unceasing stare. It comes after the monarchy. Instead of being raised in front of flashing cameras, Louise lived in the country, where afternoons passed with the scent of wet grass and mornings smelt like quiet play, long walks, and pony rides. Meals were shared by the family without ceremony. There were no big shows or demands to make an impression. Music, the most important things were respect for others, kindness, and patience. Music, ideals are subtly instilled rather than declared loudly. Louise developed as a person in this serene environment. She was considerate and perceptive, the type of youngster who saw what others overlooked. Although the Louise discovered early on that the world frequently believes that royalty is greater than life. Strength doesn't have to yell. It wasn't because she was told she mattered that she exuded calm assurance, but because she was given the freedom to find out on her own. She appeared conscious, even at a young age. Thought her name was significant. Perhaps more than others realized. She was aware of how a regal title may feel, both like a gift and a quiet burden. As she grew older, questions began to form in the silence she was so familiar with. Is it possible for happiness to endure in the face of continuous public scrutiny? Was it feasible to live freely when so much was predetermined at birth? These ideas sprang not from revolt, but from contemplation. Louise was not fleeing her roots. She was attempting to comprehend it. Then the world around her moved. Once thought to be unbreakable, the royal family started to show signs of weakness. Public scandals sparked discussion. Traditions were questioned. The gap that exists between the people and the monarchy became a subject of candid conversation. For Louise, these modifications weren't only news articles. These were indications that the organization she was a part of was delicate, human, and changing. An unprecedented turning point was the death of Queen Elizabeth II. It marked the end of an era for the country. For Louise, it was deeply private. The Queen served as a live reminder of responsibility, perseverance, and music, in addition to being a symbol of stability. Grace. Her passing brought a subtle but impactful lesson. Even those who appear permanent are transient. Time is not stopped by titles. Palaces don't guard against loss. As King Charles assumed his new function, the monarchy was highly burdened by the future. Change, rebirth, and survival were discussed. A contemporary society that no longer regards royalty with uncritical respect. Within Louise's inner life also changed during this uncertain time. Sadness has a method of improving mental acuity. Distractions are eliminated, leaving simply the veracity. That fact was straightforward and unsettling to her. Moments make up life, and moments don't wait. What if there were too many undiscovered moments along the road that was outlined for her? But what if duty noble came at the sacrifice of personal meaning? These were straightforward inquiries, rather than spectacular ones. Louise was no longer only observing the events in her surroundings. She was paying great attention to her own heart. This time of transition marked her subtle transition from a cautious follower of tradition to a young lady looking for meaning beyond anticipation. She stood on the brink of a decision that would draw attention without making any fuss or declaration, not because to controversy or spectacle, but rather because it addressed a universal issue, the aspiration to have a life that is genuinely unique. Was there a high level of Lady Louise's expectations? Are the expectations connected to the protection she has had from childhood? Let's examine the specifics of the standards for Lady Louise. The unseen bonds of anticipation and study haven. There was never a polished paper that outlined Lady Louise's the future. No formal speech, no formal letter, and no well-defined strategy were placed in her hands. However, the expectations were pervasive, heavy in the air, and silently closing in on her from every direction. Without anyone expressing it, she was presumed to be following a well-known route. Come forward as a working regal. Attend events that have been properly selected, smile when appropriate, and assist maintain the reputation of an organization far older than herself. It appeared that personal preferences would naturally, duty comes first. That was just the way things were done. As time passed, the frequency of public appearances increased. Everyone kept a careful eye on them and evaluated even more intently. Commentators complimented her each time she appeared. Calmness. Questions arose each time she failed to do so. Where had she gone? Why the lack of it? Was she quietly preparing to devote herself entirely to life as a royal? Withdrawing? Online discussion boards and newspapers filled in the blanks with speculations, and music transformed quiet into conjecture. It appeared to be a harmless guessing game to the outside world. To Louise, it was exhausting. She discovered that she was imprisoned in an odd liminal space. Nothing had been decided, yet everything felt decided for her. Her life appeared to have stopped, as if she was awaiting an invisible signal that would allow her to advance or retreat. No one could readily see the cost of this uncertainty. It wasn't rage or defiance that stirred within her. It was bewilderment. A profoundly unsettling query repeated itself over and over. Beyond what others anticipate me to be, who am I? Torn, she struggled with an identity crisis that no one could resolve between her quiet desire to follow her own path and her loyalty to her family. Royal training could prepare her for. An unexpected source of relief was found. She found solace in university life, which is so commonplace to many. In St. Andrews, Louise encountered something novel in a location already steeped in royal history. Anonymity there. She wasn't framed by custom or introduced by her title. She was just Louise, a student who reads novels, attends lectures, and engages in intellectual debate over coffee, and making friends free from the burden of centuries. In educational settings, and she experienced a freedom she had never experienced before in libraries. New worlds were revealed through books. Conversations made her think more critically. Rigid schedules were replaced by long study sessions, and curiosity replaced ceremony. Her days weren't meticulously planned to reflect music, an image for the first time. She was the owner of them. Walking around campus, getting ready for tests, and spending time in libraries are all peaceful aspects of academic life. More than just comfort. Music, they provided insight. As her thoughts grew, so did her perception of the life she was supposed to lead. Music, royal duty, from a distance appeared respectable and safe. From closer range, she began to see its hidden cost. The creeping loss of self, the constant performance, the compulsion to be symbolic as opposed to human. The pressure to conform to a role that did not allow for personal development or personal truth. What once perceived as a duty based on allegiance, it now seemed to be a life requiring continual sacrifice, frequently without inquiring as to whether the offering was made voluntarily. What began as a music, a transient form of escape, quickly evolved into something more profound. University was no longer just a break from anticipation. Music, it was a mirror. When choice took its place, it revealed to her who she could be. Presumption. She came to understand that breaking with tradition did not imply rejecting her background or her family. It means putting completeness ahead of obligation and honesty ahead of artifice. Louise underwent a subtle transformation, while the world beyond the university boundaries kept speculating. The change went unnoticed. It was not clarified by any announcement, but in the quiet places of education and introspection, a choice started to take form. A future when she could live authentically, led not by whispered expectations, but by having a distinct identity. Additionally, for the first time, that unquestionably, the future felt entirely her own. How was Lady Louise's music expressed? Choice in front of the monarch. Did she want to run away like Harry? Let's examine her in further detail. Decision as it reverberates around the castle. The silent crafting of a crucial decision and ripples in the castle. Large life decisions are rarely met with yelling or slamming. Doors. They typically develop silently, molded by lengthy walks, late nights, and low-voiced conversations. That was how it happened for Louise. There was no public altercation, no solitary disagreement, and no dramatic music. Breaking point. Rather, there was a gradual movement and a gentle turning inward. Toward music, defending her own identity. Day by day, she realized that remaining she could not afford to give up because it meant losing pieces of herself. Louise carefully considered the expense of her choice. She was aware that it might entail speaking less, being less visible, and stood further away from the dazzling lights that had been pursuing her for so long. She was aware that certain doors will close, silently, while others would never reopen. Even more agonizing was the awareness that her decision would harm those she loved and who had supported her during years of service and expectation. Nevertheless, she posed a straightforward, sincere query to herself. What was the price of carrying on with a life that is no longer appropriate? King was at the center of her mind. Charles. He was more than just a man to Louise. He was the weight of history itself. During his rule, he carefully balanced paying respect to the past with making space for modification. He appeared to be taking deliberate steps to avoid upsetting anyone, customs that had endured for many generations. Louise was aware that her choice could shake that balance, even a little. However, she also noticed another danger, one that was far more immediate and intimate. Living behind a mask, smiling through days that felt empty, and steadily shrinking to satisfy expectations that were never genuinely hers. The palace did not blow up when word of her decision started to circulate. There were no scenes worthy of headlines, no raised voices resonating across opulent rooms. Rather, there was quiet. The rooms fell into a deep, contemplative stillness, as though everyone needed a moment to catch their breath and comprehend what had recently altered. People experienced multiple emotions at once. There was astonishment, of course, music, and silent melancholy. There was also introspection, as each individual pondered what they may have done if they had been in her shoes. Louise was very clear that she wasn't running away. She wasn't criticizing the institution or rejecting her family that had influenced her life. She desired something more cautious and truthful. By establishing limits that permitted her to stay, she was deciding to rethink her relationship with the monarchy herself. It was an act of clarity rather than revolt. In response, King Charles was composed and sympathetic. His life had been full of difficult decisions at times when obligation and emotion conflicted. Based on that encounter, he showed Louise respect and tolerance. However, despite his calm reaction, beneath that, there was a silent agony. Instead of fury, disappointment persisted, but also the subtle grief that occurs when hopes must be altered. As the family one fact emerged, as they gradually came to terms with the upheaval, Louise's strength did not originate from audacious gestures or loud speeches. Music, it originated from silence, from understanding her own boundaries, and from being brave enough to pay tribute to them. In a society where music frequently makes mistakes, her decision served as a reminder that true strength may be gentle, and that sometimes the most courageous people's silence is used to make decisions. Her narrative encourages people to stop and pay attention to their own silent inquiries. It implies that allegiance does not always imply self-erasure, and that progress occasionally necessitates separation rather than resistance. Louise's journey demonstrates that transformation can be firm, considerate, and kind all at once. By making her own decision, she not destroy the world from which she originated. She just entered a life that at last felt authentic, complete, and long-lasting for the lengthy journey ahead. Never stop moving forward. What does Lady Louise's narrative teach us? Is she turning her back against the royal family? Let's locate out a redefined legacy and the whisper that persists. The audience initially observed a calm pause rather than a speech or a big declaration. There were no formal declarations, no interviews, no explanations. Rather, there was quiet. And that quiet song has a strong voice. It manifested as altered schedules, missed events, and expectations that gradually vanished. For those who followed the royal family, this absence became a puzzle. Every last aspect was scrutinized. Each pause was explained. The absence of curiosity and unending speculation was stoked by information. However, this silence was not a sign of misunderstanding. It was a decision. Louise deliberately took a step back. For someone raised in a world controlled by silence became a potent act due to schedules, traditions, and unwritten conventions. For once, she made the decision not to put on a show, not to defend herself, and not to live her life for the amusement of others. She asserted anything that was always constrained, authority over her own narrative. Additionally, while doing thus, she posed a straightforward yet audacious query. Why does someone have to continuously describe their reality so that it is legitimate? Her choice subtly questioned long-held views regarding royalty. Many believe that being strong in royal life entails complete denying oneself. Always being there, always grinning, and always going above and beyond, even when your inner serenity suffers as a result. There is a common notion that duty implies vanishing into the job, giving the person behind the title very little room. Quietly, Louise disagreed. She proved that loyalty does not have to equal self-erasing, and that commitment does not necessitate perpetual visibility. She displayed a more subdued form of courage, one that develops with time, rather than outspoken defiance. From self-awareness, one that doesn't require praise. Her strength was within, steady and serene. She demonstrated that honoring family, tradition, and obligation without abandoning personal identity. She seemed to imply that a crown can lie on a skull that is nevertheless capable of feeling thinking, and freely selects song. For King Charles, this occasion bore tremendous value. It reflected his own existence. Path, years of juggling personal convictions with expectations. Even while he was initially taken aback by the shift, it quickly made room for comprehension. There was empathy instead of conflict. Louise's choice reminded him that progress frequently occurs when tradition allows for the truth. In that mutual comprehension, family ties grew stronger. Despite the public's dread, Louise did not vanish. She just started living intentionally. Steer clear of non-stop music attention. She may have reverted to previous loves, reading, writing, or creative labor that feeds the spirit quietly. She might have made investments in genuine, private relationships rather than ones that were molded by cameras or ceremony. There are even subtle murmurs that she had an Australian companion in the past. From her time as a student, who respects her for who she is rather than what she stands for. Whether accurate or not, the concept itself encapsulates a significant aspect of existence, focused on the relationship rather than the title. Most importantly, Louise accepted the tiny liberties that many people take for granted. Choosing how to spend a day, taking leisurely strolls, and relishing tranquility without justification. These basic pleasures, which are frequently denied to royalty, were a part of her fresh beat. Her future is now open, directed not by rigid regulations, but by deliberate decision. The monarchy was not undermined by this little change. It became stronger, by making room for people. Tradition became more genuine and livable as a result. Louise's choice demonstrated that institutions thrive by adapting to change rather than fighting it. It wasn't rejection when she remained silent. It was rejuvenation. Ultimately, this tale serves as a reminder that bravery isn't always audible. It murmurs at times. Additionally, in that we hear a strong whisper. Every crown conceals a human life, full of unspoken tales, personal aspirations, and the straightforward wish to live honestly. Louise heard that voice, and in doing so assisted the dynasty listened too. What are your thoughts on Lady Louise's connection, then? Do you believe it might prevent her from doing her royal performance? Obligations? Please share your ideas in the comments section below. Remember to subscribe and like.